So today I have the good fortune of speaking with Mr. Matthew McConaughey, who's one of America's most recognizable actors, and I guess, according to his peers, also one of America's best actors, as he's won an Academy Award and multiple other awards. And we started to communicate about a year ago, and he's also been on my daughter's podcast. And Matthew recently wrote a book, Greenlights, which we're going to talk about today. I've read that, and I'm looking forward to discussing it. There's all sorts of things I want to talk to Matthew about, and so hopefully we'll have a stimulating conversation. That's my guess. So let's start with, well, we can start with whatever you want to start with, but let's start with the book, I think.
Yes, sir.
Tell me why you wrote it and when you wrote it and what you want people to know about it.
Yeah, so I've been keeping journals since I was 14 years old. And so I guess starting 15 years ago, I would always carry this treasure chest full of the journals I'd been keeping, and they were filling up that treasure chest. And I would take it with me to any place that we went for an extended amount of time, put it over there to the right of my proverbial desk and go, have it there, because if you get the itch and you get some time, I dare you to go on that treasure chest and see what's in there. Well, I've threatened to open up that treasure chest and see what those journals held for the past 15 years. Didn't have the courage really to open it up. Didn't want to make the time to go in there because I was intimidated of looking back at 50 years or however many years of my life. I'm not one for really liking to look back over my shoulder. I'm somebody who likes to, I'm still someone who rather enjoys making the sandwich more than eating it. I like making my movies more than I even like watching them. I like doing things, moving on, and heading forward. So,
well, you must have had some idea too when you were making those journals, at least in principle, that you owed an obligation to yourself at some point to look back over them. And I can see that would be intimidating because you're creating a task for yourself, a task of reconsideration and contemplation, I suppose.
Well, my excuse was, when I die, Camilla will open them up, and if there's something worth sharing, she'll do it, which was excused in martyrdom, if there's something worth it. So I maybe it was coming across 50. Unconsciously, I didn't think about 50 as a number of a time to be retrospective, but I had some time on my hands, and I had read an article in the New York Times that a young man had written, and I liked the article. I go, oh, this guy gets me, in a way that it was the first article I read where he had weaved all different times of my career and life into a thread, instead of sort of like saying he was this then and now he's this, and this then and now he's this. So he'd strung them all together, and I liked his style of writing, and I asked him to come on and be a ghostwriter for a book. We met one time. It was a good meeting. We thought it was going to be a book, a little hardback book that you could put on the back of the toilet that every college kid could take to school and could open it up any page, maybe read a truthism or a bumper sticker or something, and have a little aspiration ahead about their day. Well, the New York Times pulled him off because evidently they weren't allowing any of the writers to work with celebrities. And just as he got pulled off, and I was in the room, my office with Camilla, my wife, I said, I think I need to find a new ghostwriter. And I stopped at the same time she stopped. And she said, you know what this means? And I went, yeah, I do know what it means, which is I need to go off and write it myself. So she said, I packed up all the journals. She said, don't come back until you got something. And I headed off with 15 gallons of water. I don't know how many pounds of red meat and my favorite libation. And I went away to the desert. The first 12 days were sort of no electricity, me with my journals, no cell reception, nothing like that. I wanted to be forced with nothing but my past, and find some entertainment in that at least. And I feared being embarrassed. I feared feeling ashamed. And I feared seeing a arrogant little SOB that I was in the past. And I crossed all those things in looking back at my last 50 years. But what I noticed was that a lot of things I thought I'd be embarrassed about, I giggled at. A lot of things I thought I'd be ashamed about, I had already forgiven myself for, or now forgave myself for. And a lot of the times where I was an arrogant little SOB, what I realized is that if I wasn't the arrogant little SOB at that time, I may not have had the confidence to put myself in a situation to get absolutely humiliated and humbled. So I sat down with the journals. I remember going into thinking it was going to be more academic, thinking that that's what it was. That's what it was. After day 5, I realized, no, there's actually more folk poetry in here and stories to tell than any academia. So I backed off and said, let's just see what the journals reveal themselves to be. And I ended up with 8 stacks of all the journals. I said, what are some themes? I had a big stack of stories, big stack of people, big stack of places, big stack of prescribes, big stack of poems, prayers, and bumper stickers. So I had these 8 stacks. I said, okay, now let's sift through those and see if we find a central theme. And that's where Greenlights came from. I found that I had engineered Greenlights in my life through responsibilities taken yesterday, which bore me freedom today. I found that I'd gotten just I have no reason why good fortune landed in my lap. There was no reason why, but I said, well, let's make some rhyme out of this and do something with it. I found that also a lot of my yellow and red lights, those things that we don't really like that slow us down or make us stop, all had lessons that they revealed to me, which then made them green lights, or at least gave them green light assets. And then I also found that that the art is sort of in approaching the yellow light.
All right, so we've reestablished ourselves in a wind-free zone. So look, one of the things, you struck me as an intensely likable character as a consequence of what you revealed in your book. I mean, I kept thinking it would be a pleasure to spend time around this man, and I certainly saw no sign of arrogance in it. I thought I saw a lot of thankfulness, and a conscious thankfulness, and I think implicit thankfulness as well, and a lot of love for your family, your parents, and your current family, and gratitude for that as well. And also, one of the things that struck me too was your integrity in decision making with regards to your career. You talked about taking a break after being somewhat typecast in romantic comedies. I mean, very successfully typecast, and so there's nothing negative about that, but feeling that you had taken that as far as it could be taken,
yes,
productively and creatively, and then took a risk of really being bounced out of the system. I mean, one of the things I think that people perhaps don't understand about a society or a situation as intensely competitive as Hollywood is that it's virtually impossible to be successful there. And the probability that you'll fail, even if you are successful, is extremely high because the competition is beyond belief.
There's no help wanted signs.
No, definitely not. And so if you decide to do something like think, well, I've been successful in romantic comedies, but I don't want that anymore, you're throwing away something that's virtually impossible to attain. And then to imagine that you might recreate yourself in a different guise and be successful, it's a big risk. You see this often when actors fail to make the transition from television to the big screen. And that happens far more often than it doesn't happen, even if they have a very successful TV career. So all of that was extremely interesting. Now, okay, so you were out in the desert writing your book. How long did it take you to sort through all the material?
I went off into solitude 5 different times for 10 to 12 days apiece. The first trip out was to the desert for the first 12 days. And that was basically to see what I had. I came back from that feeling like I had something that was personal, that might be worthy of being between, two hardback covers. I remember writing early on going, okay, now you're going to have a lot of people that are going to buy this book, even if the words are crap on the page, because of who you are, McConaughey. And I said, you're going to have a lot of people who are not going to purchase this book, even if what you put on the page was awesome, because you're Matthew McConaughey. So I remember saying to myself, and one of the first things I wrote down, I was like, the words on the page need to be worthy of being put on the page if they were signed by anonymous, but at the same time need to be words that only Matthew McConaughey could have written. And that was sort of my little bubble of going, because this is not about, you've read it, it's not about a celebrity book. It's
No, in fact, there's very little in it that's celebrity-like. I was actually struck by how infrequently you made reference to the milieu that you inhabited while you've been pursuing your career as an actor. There's no celebrity gossip in it. It's family centered and very intimate. I actually wanted, it left me wanting to know more about your career, and so we can also talk about that today, flesh that out. But so that was quite remarkable for a celebrity memoir. Let's say it's a terrible way of phrasing it.
A memoir by someone who happens to be a celebrity.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't a celebrity memoir. It was an autobiographical meditation, I would say.
Okay, heard. I like that. So I went away. I went away. I came back the first 12 days. And I was like, okay, I think I got something. And then I'd come back, handle my honeydews at home, get everything back, make sure I didn't fall too much in the deficit of being a father and a husband back home. And then as soon as I could, head off again. I was fortunate to have a wife who was like, get out of here each time. When I came back, you could tell how, the first 12 days were like a purge. I mean, I came back and the whole family like saw me. I mean, I came back shedding tears. I had just sort of gone back and looked at 50 years of my life and had them down, and all of a sudden was crying. They were tears of joy of this love story that I was seeing, and to face certain things that I looked at in the past or forgot in the past or thought I forgot, but noticed that actually I'd remembered. It was a very earth shaking. My floor was moved in a good way.
Well, that's great that it was moved in a good way. That's a lovely thing to have happen to you when you're 50 and looking back.
Yes. And then 4 other trips. So 52 total days. I was in solitude. And then the next year and a half was basically editing it. And I didn't have as many of the stories in there early, which I would say served as sort of the narrative backbone throughout that stringed the whole piece together.
Yeah.
And intermittently in there, I'll put a poem, a prescribe, a prayer, or something that will either call back. I looked at them like in movies, like they're a flashback or a flash forward. And can they, coming out of a story, tell the reader, oh, this is how I saw the situation that you just read? Or can it propel you into the next story? Because the stories are really more chronological, that take you from 4 years old to 50. And I didn't have as many of the stories in there. And so the next year and a half was going, okay, I've got these stories. My editors, I would tell them, she was like, oh, geez, you got to put that in there. And that's when it became, again, I was hesitant about the word memoir. I don't have a great relationship with the word memoir. The word memoir always seems like, good night, everybody. I'm heading off into the twilight of my career, the sun's setting, have a look. And I was like, I don't want any, because I need these stories to be active because they are still active. And so telling them, as long as they had a vitality that they felt active, which they felt like they were. And then I had that thing that is so obvious when you say it, but it didn't feel obvious to me at the time, which was the more personal I got, the more I started to notice that it was probably more relatable. The more into the I that I went, the subjective, the more I noticed that, it's actually relatable to more of the human condition. And that was my hope. Well,
you have it's a collection of great stories. And part of the good fortune of your life is to have had those experiences that transform themselves into compelling stories without, without undue editing. The African story, for example, the dream story, that was quite remarkable. For me, that was a highlight of the book, I would say, where you related the dream you had, a recurring dream, or at least one that recurred twice, and on the basis of that dream, voyaged to South America and to Africa. Is that? I hope I've got that right.
The second time I had the dream, which was the exact same dream, 11 frames, 11 seconds. The second time I had it is when I chased down the first half of the dream, which was South America. I thought I'd finished it. Then 5 years after that, I had the dream for the third time, which made me say, I got to chase down the second half, which was there were African tribesmen on the banks of the river to the left. And that's when I went to Africa.
Any idea why? I mean, you staked a lot on the pursuit of a dream. And I mean, maybe we could say that's the motif of your book, that you staked a lot on the pursuit of a dream, but it's much more concrete in that episode. You had an actual dream, a literal nighttime dream that recurred. And as a consequence of that, you took a large risk, or a series of risks. Merely going to Africa was a risk, I would say, and not something that would be expected. It's quite out of the ordinary to do that, obviously.
Well, I've had dreams that are similar to each other, but it's the only dream I've ever had that one was so specifically, I mean, it was exact. When I say 11 frames, I mean like film frames, picture 1, 2, 3, for 11 seconds, the exact same frames, exact same editing sequence in my mind, 11 seconds, that ended in such a, I don't know if ironic's the right it was the elements of a nightmare, but it was the opposite of a nightmare. It was a wet dream. Mm-hmm. And so the fact that it was the exact same dream that I've had once in 92, again in 96. Whoa, I had that twice. That's the first shakeup. Well, that was the exact same dream I had 4 years ago. Exactly. First time that's ever happened. Oh, maybe that's a celestial suggestion here. Something is telling me.
What do you think you specifically learned in pursuit of that? And have you had the dream again? My guess would be no, that you probably exhausted it, but I might be wrong.
No, I have not. To this point, it seems that I fulfilled the dream in the trip to Africa, which was the two elements of the dream. One was the Amazon River, one were African tribes. Those are the two geographic elements that I knew that were crystal clear in the dream. So that's why I went to South America. That's why I went Mali. I have not had it again. I mean, I'll say this. I'm always looking for a good reason to go for a walkabout. So I found a really good reason, a concrete reason there. And why were they wet dreams? There was nothing overtly sexual about them. There was, so they were, spiritual in that way is how I took them. Now in Mali, I can say, and I've been back to Mali. I went back to Mali, as I write about in the book, 5 years later after I fulfilled the dream. Not because I had the dream again, just because Mali, I've never felt more at home in a place than Mali. Now you're in certain places, you're like, I've been here before. The gravity here is right. I've been here before. Whether it's another life, I don't know. But Mali was where I felt, this is home. This was the original home. I've been here. And so that's what went back. So that's my favorite place to go. And I've been back and did the exact same trip I did when I chased down the second half of the dream.
And you shed your identity to a great degree when you went to Africa.
Yeah.
And so that may enable you to exist in a way that would be much unlike the manner in which you have to exist where people know where you are or who you are. What do you think that did for you? Like the dream, you took this dream quest, let's say, and you paid a price for it. The risk would be the price. Mm. What was the consequence of allowing yourself to do that?
That it was on me, that it was my doing. I could own it at a time of becoming famous. You go through, at least I did, and still do at times, go through, wait a minute, what's mine? What am I getting based off of my worth as the man I am, as the person I am? Forget my fame. And it becomes challenging. I want to know, what is it's real? What is it not? How many of those I love yous are meant, or how many of them were just following because I just had a big box office hit? And wait a minute, the person that I've had dinner with their kids and spent Christmases with, who have shared I love yous and hugs, then now I have two movies that didn't do well and that person won't return my call. Wait a minute. What all matters? What do I want to do? What are we doing here? So,
if you have a reputation that has a life of its own, it becomes very difficult to distinguish between yourself and that reputation.
Sure.
And that's one of the pitfalls of fame. And lots of times you see people sacrifice themselves to their reputation. You see celebrities becoming impersonators of themselves.
Yes.
And it's a tragic fate, I would say. And
well, that's when you go, who's wagging who? I've never wanted my fame to wag me. I mean, like, no. I understand I got famous because of who, to whatever extent, because of who I am. And what did I do? I
could see in the book that you were snapping yourself out of your fame, even while you were doing things like the motorhome adventures, because you were living a life that certainly wasn't what I expected to read, that you would voluntarily abandon what so many people value as like the pinnacle of cultural achievement, say at the popular level, and shed all that and set out like any person who doesn't have that.
Right. Well, what I was like, for instance, in the South American trip, and it happened in the Mali trips and all the walkabouts, I needed to go to a place where I'd just become famous too. I mean, my world was like, all of a sudden, all the options were mine. And 2 days before, none of those options were there. And now it was a world of yes. And I'm going, I only have 24 hours in a day, and I would do any of this work. And you're now telling me I can do it all?
Yeah.
You're asking me to be discerning right now? And again, I went away to go, I need to go where someone doesn't know my name. I need to go away where no one's seen my movies. I want to go where there's no electricity. I want to go someplace where those hugs and tears when I say goodbye 22 days later are based only off of the man they met 22 days ago.
Well, you managed to abandon them too. One of the problems with being famous is, and I suspect this is particularly the case with the kind of fame that you have, is that it must be very difficult to distinguish between people wanting something from you and people enjoying your company and liking you. And it might even be difficult for them to distinguish between those things, because fame is a very difficult thing to deal with, even as an onlooker, even as a family member. You wrote about your mom's reaction, for example. She became a fangirl to some degree, and that would be definitely disconcerting.
Yes, it was. Yeah, I had 8 years there where my mom and I needed a mother. And what on the other end of the phone was a fan of my fame, someone who wanted my fame more than I did.
Right. Well, it shows you the power of that too, because your mother obviously cared for the person you were before you became famous, but Absolutely. She was overwhelmed. And it's not surprising. I mean, to some degree, the entire Hollywood apparatus exists to manufacture fame that's overwhelming. That's its whole, I can't say that's its whole purpose, but that's what it uses to drive, let's say, to drive people to the theater. So to be victimized by that, to fall under the sway of that is unsurprising. It's surprising that it could be resisted. And that was certainly, you could certainly see that with your mother's response.
Oh, for sure.
And I'm sorry, I don't remember. Is your mom still alive?
Yes, she is. She's 88 years young and with us right now.
So, and has that situation rectified itself? Did she adapt to?
We both adapted.
Yeah.
I got through enough time where I felt stable enough in my career that I was like, her loose lips aren't going to sink my ship. And actually, I let go the reins. And as soon as I said, "You go, Mom, here's the mic. Hit that red carpet line. You can talk to anybody. You tell, no filter. Sell whatever stories you want." 99% of the time, it's awesome. And I'm like, you know what? Let her enjoy it. And I was able to enjoy it. And then come to that, realization that, I wasn't going to change her. So because I couldn't change her, it's kind of like the sabbatical I took from the rom-coms. I wasn't going to change her, so I just had to kind of block her out for a certain amount of time that ended up being 8 years until I was stable enough to go for it. And our relationship's great. And, all through that time, she didn't love me less. She's loved me in a new, different way, as well as being her son. What I was needing was I needed her to double down on being a mom to me.
Right.
Where instead of, she didn't double down, she didn't even cut it in half. She kind of was really wanting to know about the fame part. And I remember telling her things like, "Well, you keep wanting to come out here and see me, but what if I was an accountant in Chicago? Would you want to come see me as much?" And my two brothers were like, "You don't want to come see us as much. You want to see little brother." And we were like, "Yeah, we get it." So we call her out. And it was a strange 8 years. I never questioned her love for me, though. I knew we were going to be fine. I knew we weren't going to head to our deathbeds going on a bad note. I knew we were going to come out the other side. It was just a matter of when, and we did.
it's nonetheless a good example of one of the unintended consequences of fame, right? Is that this very profound alteration in the nature of your personal relationships. So
Yes.
So I want to switch topics a bit. I've been watching you in True Detective, which my son recommended, and I'm really enjoying. I believe you said in the book that the script leapt off the page for you.
It did, especially the words of the character Rustin Cole.
Right, who you play.
Marty Hart role that Woody played.
Yes. You were offered that role.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I read the thing, and I remember telling him, I said, guys, I understand why you're coming to me for Marty Hart. I go, but the guy who I cannot wait to turn the page to see what comes out of his mouth is this guy, Rustin Cole. And they were a bit surprised.
Yeah, well, they're both complex characters, so you could see that either of them might have been attractive. But I was quite struck by your characterization of Cole. It reminded me of Heath Ledger, and that's why I wanted to talk to you about it. You play a dark character very well, if you don't mind me saying so. I mean,
thank you.
It's believable. I've known some dark people, and your portrayal is believable, very believable. And so that makes me wonder what price you pay for that. It's kind of a cliche, you play a dark role and it invades you, but it isn't obvious to me how you can play a dark role without it invading you. And then, or at least you have to allow something dark in yourself to come out and respond to that. And you're very different on the screen playing Rustin Cole than you are in a romantic comedy role, clearly.
Mm-hmm.
And it's somewhat surprising to see that transition, which I guess is why other people might be surprised by that too, which is why you actually had a bit of a hiatus when you stopped taking rom-com roles. But I'm curious, like, what were the consequences for you of playing that character in particular, but dark characters in general?
The dark characters, the baddie, usually has so much more identity than the white knight, than the hero in stories that I read in scripts and things. The dark characters and are also they're always usually outsiders, and the consequence is that if I'm really going to portray one of those well, and that part of myself, I'm putting myself on an island, and that excites me. I want to feel like the underdog. I want to feel like I don't have to pander to manners or graces. I'm living by different rules, and not even to prove a point, but just say in a Rustin Cole's position, someone who just, I didn't make big acting choices with Rustin Cole. I just did what I could to understand the text so well that I could just say it and not have to solicit it. Or again, Rustin Cole was a guy who preferred his own company to anyone else's, and that solitude. That was a vacation for me. Also, as a person who is a believer, to have to be inhabit a character who is not a believer at all, and here's why. I've always thought this was odd. At the time that I chose and wanted to go inhabit Rustin Cole was the time that my faith was strongest. And if my faith would have been as strong, I might have been a little more fearful of going so deep into this man's mind, spirit, and ethos. And
so you had some protection.
But I trust.
He's very nihilistic, the character Cole. He reminds me, there's a philosopher in South Africa who's an anti-natalist. Unfortunately, his name escapes me for a moment. I had a debate with him a couple of years ago, but his basic premise is that conscious suffering is so morally untenable as a phenomenon that all life should cease. That if we were making the proper moral choices, we'd stop reproducing. But not only that, that we'd also do what we could well, we can leave it at that, that we'd stop reproducing, because if you sum up a life, it's bitter, and the bitterness overwhelms the sweet. And so it's cruelty to perpetuate.
Yes, I think that is beautiful and in many ways true. And I think it's also hilarious.
What strikes you as comical about that? You laughed about it, and
because that's where, of course, we're on the way to dying. You talk about it all the time. It's tough. It's cruel. It's hard. We're out here. This thing is okay. I'm in. So that's inevitable.
That's the strange thing, and I felt too. I mean, I can certainly understand the argument.
But I hear it, and it adds up. But if that's inevitable, which I think we can all say that's inevitable. It's like we're on the way to dying. It's over. We'll never know if this is the end or not. So or if there's anything after it, and it's hardships and overcome. Okay, since that's inevitable, and we got to do this thing anyway, if we're choosing to stay in life another day, so what's a better way to go about it? Saying it's all for nothing, or realizing right there when you go, it's all for nothing? No, that's why it's all for everything.
Yeah, well,
they're in the same
it also
place.
Seems to me that if your objection to life is its suffering, adopting an attitude that will make that suffering worse is probably not a reasonable solution. And that's where that grounds out for me.
There's no construction in there. What I mean, there's nothing affirmative or life-giving about that. It's not making the best of the situation if the situation's doomsday. So, I'm not for Hallmark cards and delusional optimism, but I mean, in this way, I would say optimism is survival. It's like, well, okay, if it's all for nothing.
I think optimism is courage. If it's not naive. And one of the things I liked about your book too was that your optimism wasn't naive. And, because you had enough harsh experiences so that any naive optimism would have vanished.
Right.
Even the way you grew up. I mean, it wasn't traumatic, but it had its harshness about it.
Sure. Yeah, it was immediate. It was physical. The same hands that hugged are the same hands that could harm.
Yes, and there was also very little sign of, and maybe no sign of bitterness about that. And no sign, I didn't think of any excuses for it either. Like when you portrayed your father, like you said, he was a man who could hug and hit, and both of them were meant. And they weren't casual. I never got the impression from your book that your father's actions were casual. His physical altercations with you and your brothers. It's a different ethos. It's not an ethos that's well understood today, I would say, or one that's ever appreciated. And I suppose that's because of its harshness. But I didn't detect any sign of bitterness from you emanating towards that.
No, and I have none. While I choose to maybe give consequences to my children in different ways than my father and mother did, there was absolutely no casualness to why and when he did punish us. None. I talk about in there, the values that were instilled even by the antonyms of the words that we got in trouble for saying. To get my first butt whooping for saying I can't. Oh, geez. Okay. The thought of can't brings pain. Oh, don't think can't. Okay. You can have trouble. There's a difference. And to say the second butt whooping for saying I hate you to my brother. I didn't know what the hell I hate you meant. I heard it from older kids at school, and I thought it might be cool to throw it out there. I hate you. Well, that was at my own birthday party. My mom stopped the whole party and said, "What'd you say? You don't ever tell your brother or anyone you hate them." Bent me over right there, embarrassed the heck out of me. Again, the next one for lying. So what do I learn out of those? Don't say I can't, don't hate, don't lie. Boy, when I did those, I felt pain. So what are the antonyms of those? Love instead of hate. Understand you're having trouble, but don't believe you can't. And tell the truth, don't lie. Those are three great values. He was preparing me for, you're going to need this in life. It was also the time when I called him to tell him I want to go to film school instead of law school. And he tells me,
Yeah,
don't.
that was a striking story.
And you know what happened? I've realized now, many years later, I think what happened in that moment is he heard, and that conversation lasted 25 seconds. Pop, what do you got, little buddy? Don't want to go to law school, want to go to film school. You sure that's what you want to do? Yes, sir. Beep, 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 beep. Well, don't half-ass it.
Mm-hmm.
Boom, sent me into flight. But what he heard in that conversation was his son, who we were brought up in a very structured family, disciplined. You work your way up a ladder, you follow the rules. He heard his son calling him to tell him, he could tell I wasn't calling for permission.
Mm-hmm.
He could tell I wasn't calling kind of, well, I was thinking maybe. No, he heard my voice. I want to go to film school instead of law school. And he said,
you also weren't calling because of failure, because you'd worked at law school.
Right. But he heard that I was not bluffing. I was not really calling to ask his permission. And in that moment, I think he heard what all parents want to hear. Yes, my child's going their own way. They broke out the mold.
Yeah, well, what you'd hope every parent would want to hear.
I hope so, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can't come. I had plenty of times before that I asked him for things where I was bluffing, and he could tell. Where, Dad, will you please get me the skateboard elbow pads and knee pads? I really want to be a skateboarder. Are you sure, son? Yes, sir. Shit, I did skateboarding for 3 weeks, and then they gathered dust and got cobwebs. Damn it, that was a fad. I talked my dad into doing something, and I didn't follow through on it. But he heard this time a resolve and a clarity in me, and I think on the other end of the line, he was going, that's my boy. That's what I'm
Yeah, well, for him to give you the green light that rapidly, the situation must have been set up properly. And for the green light that he gave you to be accepted by you as exactly that, as encouragement.
Yes.
The situation must have been set up properly. Okay, so you talked about playing Cole in True Detective and that you were protected from his dark excesses, let's say, by your faith. Why did that provide you with, in what way did that provide you with protection? It's a striking thing to say, especially given his attitude is Mephistophelian. There's a character in Goethe's Faust, Mephistopheles, who's Satan himself, and his essential credo is that everything that lives should perish because of the sin of its existence, essentially. And so that's Cole in a nutshell, right? Yeah, and it's a logically tenable argument, but it's one that needs to be rejected holistically. I shouldn't use that word. I hate that word, but you don't reject that argument rationally because it's a rationally tenable argument. You have to reject it with your whole being instead and say, well, despite this, I'm going to live and I'm going to try to live in an appropriate manner.
Yes.
But you said your faith protected you from Cole.
Well, it was one of the things that allowed me to fully go into Cole and fully believe Cole and get down and live it and look at the world through that lens.
Right.
I had already had a few year run of my life where I was quite agnostic. My agnosticism was not about trying to prove the disbelief of God's existence. My agnosticism was about me going, you sure have been letting yourself off the hook, McConaughey, Mr. Fatalist. Oh, I'll forgive you again because you're being a repeat offender and I'm kind of tired of it. Put your damn hands on the wheel, man. Talking to myself. You're driving here and quit going to this, I can pray and be forgiven, but you're repeat offending. Cut it out. I had gone through a few years earlier in my life of agnosticism where I was not so much trying to prove a non-existence of God as I was trying to have more self-reliance and self-determination on myself because I'd been letting myself off the hook. And
how was that related to the agnosticism, do you think? Because you put those together in the way that you're relating this story.
Well, I needed to feel like I was wholly responsible for myself and what happened to me. That I was not going to let myself slide.
There's an ideal calling to you then, eh? Like when you experience yourself as ashamed by your own behaviors. What that means is that there's an ideal inside you that's trying to manifest itself, right? Because you wouldn't be ashamed if you weren't comparing yourself to something better. And the question then becomes, well, what is that better thing that you're comparing yourself to? And it's an ideal. And then the question becomes, well, what is the ideal? And that's the sort of fleshing out what that ideal is that's the function of religious thinking. And so that's why I was interested in your comment about agnosticism. In Revelation, in the book of Revelation, Christ comes back as a judge. Even though he's a figure of mercy, let's say, he comes back as a judge. And the reason for that, this is from Carl Jung, the reason for that is that any ideal is a judge. And so if you posit the highest ideal, then you put yourself in a position where you're judged. And that's when your conscience tortures you.
Yep.
And so you can discover your ideal that way by having a dialogue with your conscience and say, well, I'm not living up to who I should be. Well, who should that be? Like, where does that figure come from? Well, that's a great mystery, that it's the higher form of being that you're capable of manifesting that's calling to you.
And let me say this, it was a version of when my mortal father died. I write about this, about being less impressed and more involved. I sobered up. It was time to become a man. It was time to quit relying on the fact that I knew he had my back. He was above government, above law. If I really got in a pickle, he had my back. And now he's physically gone. So this was, I'm going to discard my spiritual father and say, no, we're racing to the red light, buddy. That's all it is. So what are you doing while it's here? There's one play and you go until you die and that's it. So what are you going to do? Don't be let yourself off the hook thinking, well, there may be life after this. Stop it. So that's what I'd gone through that. My feeling come out of that and I didn't feel this till later because I allowed myself to stay in the midst of being really scared of, oh my gosh, am I going to get struck by lightning here? Was that my God was going, thank you. Yes. Wish more of us would put our hands on the wheel. Or we throw this fate card out there really lackadaisically, like, oh, inshallah, c'est la vie. I believe, well, okay, if that's it, then ride around and run all the red lights. Get your damn hands on the wheel. Yes, you are supposed to be self-determining. So that got me and woke me up and sobered me up into that position. Now, the going into the rusting coal, I'll say this. So I found that I call it like almost like a boomerang reverb. Wherever I am strongest in my own life, I like to go to I actually can inhabit the opposite even better. The deeper I go into whatever would be to create the opposition. Meaning, when I played prosecuting attorneys, I actually usually believe in the defense's position more and study their defense more, their position more, which then makes me again feel like an underdog over here to go, well, I really got to know what my argument is, because I actually kind of agree with them. When I play defense attorneys, I'll usually agree or push myself to a point of agreeing with the prosecution. Well, at a time where my faith was the most fulfilled, Rustin Cole was like, here's another what I call a boomerang reverb. Here's another time to go way over to the opposite side, because I'm so coming out here with so much steam and where I am and what I really believe and how I'm feeling in life. And you got newborn children and all the things that were opposition that I have in my life, opposition to who Rustin Cole was. That was, I don't know why that is, but I look back and I have had a consistency of that, of wherever I am in my life. Sometimes I'll lay in and go play a character that I'm calling, but I'm also feeling like I'm drawing something. Well, now that you're so secure here, let's test it. Let's go all the way to the other side, because over there, here's what I'm saying, because I feel so strong in the position, say at that time with my faith, now I have the strength to go inhabit somebody over there that is on the opposite side, and not have to keep my eyes open to make sure the door's open. I can trust that the door can be shut and I'll still be there when I'm done with this. I'm still there. It's still happening. You have to see it, because I don't want to see it. If I'm peeking over there going, hey, are we okay, God? Are we okay with what I'm saying and doing here? No. Well, now I'm half-assing it. Now, I'm not really inhabiting the part. I'm playing Rustin Cole going, I believe everything he says. I actually thought Rustin Cole was hilarious, which you probably would now understand by I've laughed at 2 comments that from things that you said about the other people that spoke like Rustin Cole.
Yeah, well, things can be dark enough so that the immediate response to them can be laughter.
Yeah. So that may help explain what you're asking, but I don't know why that is. I don't know why that is for me.
It's not a straightforward thing to sort out. Let me ask you about a little bit more about fame. So, now and then you see stories, true or not, about Hollywood celebrities who are irritated with the consequences of their fame. And it's very easy to be judgmental about that because they're obviously, the benefits to that fame appear obvious. Monetary gain,
access
to opportunity, the benefits, I suppose, of the ego benefits, perhaps, of being known rather than unknown.
Sure.
And then, especially in the Hollywood community, I would say it's more difficult to generate sympathy for celebrities who are hurt by their fame because the price, it's so obvious that that's the price that has to be paid to be successful in something that's mass marketed, like a movie, where your face is associated with the product, right? You can't extract out the success. You can't distinguish between the success and the fame. But I don't think it's possible to understand what fame does to your life until it's happened to you. So I'm curious, and you protect yourself, you hide. I don't mean in a withdrawing sort of way, but I mean, you live in Texas, you don't live in LA. And you go on these sojourns where no one knows you. So you set up escape mechanisms, let's say, or...
Yes.
So tell me about fame and about the impact that it's had on you.
So initially, fame happened to me extremely quickly. It happened over one weekend when the film A Time to Kill came out. The Friday afternoon before Time to Kill opened that Friday night, I'm walking down a promenade in Santa Monica to go get my tuna fish sandwich that I always like to get. 400 people on the promenade, 396 mind their own business. 4 of them looking, staring at me. A couple girls thought I was cute. Somebody liked my shoes. 100 scripts out there that I want to do. I'll do any of those. 99 no's, 1 yes. Now, within 48 hours, Time to Kill opened up that weekend. Very, very good. Good reviews, et cetera, et cetera. That following Monday, 48 hours later, I go down the same promenade, everything inverted. Now 396 out of those 400 people were staring at me, and 4 weren't. And no's, check and fly, what have you. Now, those 100 scripts that were 99 no's and 1 yes inverted. 99 yes, please do this. And 1 no. Whoa, the roof has been taken off. Oh my God, you're so good. I love you. Oh my God, I'm so sorry about Miss Hud. Number one, who are you? How'd you know I had a dog? How'd you know her name was Miss Hud? And how'd you know she had cancer? Whoa, you just skipped 4 things. Nobody's a stranger anymore. Everyone seems to have an inherent biography of me. I'm feeling trespassed on it. Is it okay? Does that I love you mean something? Boy, they say that a lot out here. I've only said that to 4 people in my life. You shouldn't throw that word around here a lot. Maybe that's how it's supposed to be. Yeah, Jesus. Yeah. So trying to take that in, I learned a great lesson after year 7 of fame. And it's probably year 7 for a reason.
How old were you when that happened?
96, so I'm 1888, 8 years later, 26 years old. 26.
So you're still pretty young, but you weren't 17. So you had some maturity. You had some maturity at that point. Thank God.
Yeah, I know more of what I'm not than maybe more than what I do or what I am. But I'm aware enough of who I don't want to be, and I'm aware enough that I need some discernation in this now optionless yeses that are coming at me in my world. I'm aware that that I need to, again, be less impressed and more involved and go, hey, now that I have the chance, now that I've got the wheel and I can go wherever I want, where am I going to go? Which was the first unbalancing sort of very scary proposition, which is why I took off the first couple of times to the monastery and then to Christ in the desert. Hear my damn self think, try and decipher and disseminate what matters from who am I in this? What do I actually want to do? What do I not want to do? What do I want to make stands on? Look, I remember for a while there, I had my life was so many like things on top. The frequency of events were on top of me, from just walking down the street to interviews to talking to somebody. My life was being recorded. The world was now a mirror. And I remember feeling almost numb. I couldn't put a demarcation between the life, the fame I'd just gotten and myself. So I remember telling myself, well, since you're kind of numb, I took the old Abraham Lincoln thing. I was like, just be a gentleman and don't lie. All right, just stick to these two things. And I gave some boring ass interviews, but I was a gentleman and I didn't lie. But I just said, like, don't even try and get colorful. Don't even try and have an opinion on anything. Just right now, ride through this and be a gentleman and don't lie. And I gave the same interview 50 times in a row over quite a few months.
Yeah, well, there is something to be said when you're exposed to that degree to adopting a strategy of don't do anything stupid for a while.
Yes. It was, surviving on the way to what could possibly become thriving, but it was holding my head above water and going, just keep knocking them down. You'll take some time off. You'll get some time off to let your memory catch up with you later.
So to begin with, it was a shock, and you developed some strategies for dealing with it. What about over the longer run? Now you've been well known for, it's got to be 25 years, eh?
So 32 or 33 years old. I wake up and it clicks for me one time that, you got to get the joke in Hollywood. And the joke is, it ain't personal. It's business.
Right.
And that's not a particular joke to Hollywood. Maybe it's a particular joke in life a lot, in business. But that made me go, okay. Don't take it so personally when that person I talked about earlier won't even call you back because your last couple of movies have failed and you spent, you were on the list to be their children's godfather 5 years ago. Don't take that personally, or don't take it personally when that person now, because you did get hit, is calling you and wants to go out and hang out again. Don't even bring up that, hey, you wouldn't even answer my, don't even tell them you understand the score about how they wouldn't call you then, but now they do now.
Well, that's a good technique to avoid resentment.
Yes.
And resentment is so toxic. It's so toxic.
Well, that's what getting the joke of not understanding that wasn't personal.
Yeah. I've done that with people who are looking for work, because it's difficult to find a new job. And you're going to get turned down a lot in all likelihood. You're going to send your resumes out to 50 places and get one positive reply. If you're, you can expect that. It might not be that bad, but it could be. It's not personal. Most of those jobs don't even exist. It has something to do with you, but not that much. There's a huge situational factor there, and you have to take that into account.
Yes. Well, it's similar to we lose a loved one. For me, I lose my father. Well, after he dies, after he moves on from this life, I find out some facts where the message and the messenger were not simpatico. What he was teaching me and what he was actually doing, there was a gap between those things. And I was like, what?
Inevitably, right? Inevitably. You actually want that from your father. You want your father to teach you better than he is.
Yay.
Yay.
But the first feeling can be, and I've seen people get a lot of resentment.
Oh, yeah. Betrayal. That. Yeah. And it's true. It is a betrayal. Yeah. But what, you want your father to put forward the worst version of himself and use that as what he teaches you?
See, this goes back to that nihilistic view. If it's all for nothing, then come on, let's make it all for everything. I'm with you on that. So my father moving on, it happened pretty quickly for me of going like, oh, I get it. He's wanting me to be better than he is. He's wanting me to do better. I get it. Bravo. So, but I could tell maybe if that had happened 2 years earlier, I wouldn't have been in the emotional space. I might have been. Because it was flabbergasting. It's like meeting a hero. and they turn out to be an asshole. And you're like,
well, they're very likely to turn out badly in comparison to your idealization of them.
100%. But at the same time, you go talk to your favorite musician who you followed, who formed your version of patriotism and fairness in the world, and you go meet them, they turn out to be an asshole, and you go like, they don't even believe in what they wrote. You're like, what? But
if flawed people were incapable of creativity, we wouldn't have any creativity. Right. And so I think what you have to do when you're dealing with creative people is realize that, or people who are creative and accomplished even, is realize that the fact that they've managed that despite all their flaws is the thing that's truly remarkable, because they have as many flaws as the next person.
Yep.
So yes. Thank God this is why, when I see someone like Louis C.K., for example, pilloried terribly, I think, well, yeah, he did some things that were unseemly, certainly even by his own standards, obviously. So what do we make of that? Well, there's plenty of people who do unseemly things, but very few of them are as masterful a comedian as Louis C.K. So do we want to lose him because he's flawed?
Right.
It seems inappropriate, because we'd lose everybody that way. And then we just have loss. That's not helpful.
Yes. I mean, I think you're leaning into, a lot of what we call cancel culture today.
Yeah.
Can that, in the name of rehabilitation, do we have to have a world in which we are able to grow and evolve, if that's what we're trying to do? Now, I'm not for repeat offenders or tyrants, but if someone screws up and they sincerely want retribution, I think it's fair to give those people.
Well, it better be, because otherwise we're all doomed.
Right?
Well, absolutely. There's not a person among us who hasn't made repeated errors, and if contrition and repentance aren't sufficient, then we're all damned. Right. No doubt about that. Yep. So, all right. So we were continuing our discussion on fame. So you're 25 years into being famous, and you seem to be handling your success,
right,
in a manner that allows you to be pleased about the way your life has unfolded. And so thank God for that. And here you are. You're still here after all these years. And so you've handled your fame well. How come? How could you manage that?
Okay, how can I manage that? Well, big thing for me, and it works for me in my life like this, just getting a click of a word or an understanding will completely change my perspective when I go, that's it. That's true. I'm going to quit banging my head against the proverbial wall. Now I understand. That one big click for me at 7 years was, it ain't personal, it's business. That helped a lot. So now I went, okay, I understand the impermanence of this. Just roll, dance with this guy, dance with it. Next one, that was just sort of a behavioral perspective, even though it sounds like a cool one-liner, was when people would ask, or I would have myself run into an inconvenience of fame, a paparazzi or whatever, someone looking over the wall, not be able to go outside. I was like, I'm not going to gripe about it, because that check is already cashed.
Right. That's right.
I can't go back. If it's inevitable, I'm going to figure out a good way to get through this. I then started to say, okay, well, when you're watched in life, Matthew, and a camera's on you, notice how you speed up and you get a little nervous? Well, why don't you look at this like the master acting class? See if you can go out into the world with eyes on you, uninvited eyes, cameras recording, and actually behave and do just the behavior that you went out to do.
Yeah.
Okay, we're in New York City. Makeup artist doing my face. My son's 3 years old. He's talking to his favorite thing's fire truck. She goes, well, my husband's a fire captain. He's actually blocks away. You want to have him bring the fire truck over? Downtown New York. Well, that means a lot of paparazzi are going to come, right? But my 3-year-old son doesn't know what paparazzi are, and he gets to see his first fire truck live. Geez, do I go down there and show my son's first fire truck, or do I tell him, no, son, we're not going to see the fire truck because you'll understand it later. There are people with cameras. I'm like, F that, man. My son wanted to see his first fire truck is much more important and came before any right that anyone's got, that inconvenience that comes with my fame. We're going to see the damn fire truck. Well, he does see the fire truck. He sees the fire truck. Cameras all around. He didn't understand what it was. I'm sitting there going like, this was about letting my son see the fire truck. I'm trying to live my life, and I check with myself. I'm not foolish with my fame. I don't open the doors and invite the devils in, or open my, self up and say, yeah, I'm an open book, have a look, come on in. No, I understand. I could be fully taken advantage of, and there are plenty of people who would love to take advantage of that. But I often tell myself, again, who's wagging who? What are your rights, McConaughey, as a human, as a citizen, as the man you are? Don't let those be taken away from you because of something you got along the way, which was fame and inconveniences that come with that. So while I don't advertise, my wife and I say this, we do not advertise ourselves. But if we want to go for a walk in the park, or go see that proverbial fire truck and show our child that, we're going to go, let's do it. And we're doing it. And if you want to record us, I call them the Discovery Channel. Record it. You know what? Good use of film, good use of recording. So
there is advantages to having eyes on you too, because it does force you to behave.
You can leave your keys in your car in a lot of places, because if anyone's going to come rob your car, they're going to document the one trying to rob it. It's a bit of a security blanket on that too. So you see where I've spun a few things here in perspective, not denying the inconvenience, but saying, hey, if this check is cash, here's how I'm going to try and get constructive and do it. And so fame now, it gets me in certain doors. I've had to watch this. Things that I'll say as a famous person can come out in bold print, not just on the printed page, but to people. So I've spoken too strongly and actually hurt people with my words, where maybe I didn't have the emoji to put on the end of the what I wrote with a wink, and they heard it like I was throwing a dagger at them. But I was going, no, I was just tickling you. I didn't mean to hurt you, And what tickled me may bruise somebody else, and my words come out with that weight sometimes. So I have to watch that.
Yeah, definitely. I remember when I was a teenager, I got put down by someone who was reasonably well known in public, and it was a misunderstanding, but it burned itself into my memory. And I thought, if I'm ever in a situation where I'm well known, I'm going to remember this so that I don't. And had he been an everyday person, let's say, what he said wouldn't have had nearly the impact on me that it did. So, and that is a strange thing to have to realize and to weigh your words that way. I'm cognizant of your time. I know that you have another obligation coming up. And so I thought it might be useful to move towards closing this. People are going to wonder how it was that we came to have a conversation.
Yes.
And so maybe you could shed some light on that. And because I'm curious about it as well.
I got turned on to you from a friend of mine about 4 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. And I started listening to a lot of what you were saying, and many of the things you said I had been thinking about, but I heard you putting them into words and context. I was like, wow, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm trying to get to. I found, and a lot of it goes back to talk about self-determination, which we've talked about a lot about, and self-authoring. And then you see a lot of those threads through my book, maybe in a different way, in a more folksy way. But a lot of what you've said gave me confidence to go, I'm going to put my story on paper. So I thank you for that. And that's why I thank you
pleasure.
In the back of the book. I reached out to you, I guess a year and a half ago or so, and you and I chatted, and I've stayed in contact with your daughter. Your definition, one of the great simple things, I said earlier, sometimes just to understanding a word differently. I've always had trouble in a tough relationship, an awkward relationship with many words, but my two that I've had the longest trouble with are vulnerability, and humility.
Yeah, those are tough ones.
They're tough ones. So humility, be humble. Well, for decades, be humble. I lost confidence when I was humble. I feigned false modesty, which I knew at the time that's arrogant. What are you doing?
Right, absolutely. It's very difficult to have humility without being arrogant about it. Weirdly enough,
you said, and correct me if I misquote you. Humility is knowing you have more to learn.
You're either in love with what you know or you're in love with what you don't know, and there's a lot more of what you don't know. So pick your love carefully.
Oh, well, that I went, I purchase. I'm in on that. But for the first time when I see that, I'm not shrinking. I'm actually standing taller.
Mm-hmm.
My heart's higher. My chin's higher. My shoulders are further back.
Right.
I have more courage going forward because, 100%. I can rely on that until I'm gone, and maybe even further than that. Yes, I have more to learn. I purchase. But now I can go forward with confidence of actually what I do know, what I have built. I can have more courage. I can forgive easier. I can take responsibility with more courage. I can take care of the things I've built and to attend those gardens better with that understanding of humility. So for that, I thank you.
I appreciate that. Yeah. It's a humility. It's a form of courage.
I want to throw a little funsy out there for you. Okay. So while I was writing, and I've become a fan, which I'd love to continue talking with you more about this subjective I and objective we, in the third eye, sort of the jumbotron of our life. When we hop out of ourselves and have a look, or we project forward in our lives and say, who am I in 10 years? Or what would my eulogy be? You see, I write a lot about these things in the book. But while I was writing, I hopped out. I gave myself the pleasure one night after a few sips, and it was late at night. And mind you, the most trouble, I'm happy to say this, the hardest thing about going to write this book for me was making myself go to bed. I was putting 17-hour days in, and I was just like, you got to get some sleep. But anyway, one of these nights where I was in the fever pitch on fire writing, I wrote down I hopped outside of myself and said, I'm going to write reviews from people that I think this is what they would say about this book after reading it. And this is one of them.
That's a great way to become aware of your audience, or of the audience you want to have. Well, and you have to speak to an audience when you're writing, obviously.
Well, it's a very subjective experience, but I think there is another, as you said, the good thing about talking to oneself in the third person is it's a different view of awareness. Mm-hmm. It's an objective awareness back at am I actually doing what I intended to do? Is what I intended actually being recorded? Is being recorded actually what's being received? There could be a lot of gaps in between those things, and I'm trying to close those gaps, right? So I hopped outside of myself and wrote what I thought you would say about Greenlights, and Matthew McConaughey, the author. It's entrance level understanding to masterclass psychology delivered in a folk song. I mean, the guy's got the gift of gab, man. What can I say? Jordan Peterson.
That's quite remarkable, because that is very close to what I thought. So I think you nailed it. It's very difficult to put forward a message without being propagandistic, and the best way to do that is to tell stories. And your book is full of stories, and the stories seem to me to add up to a life well lived, and that's a good model. And so it's a model, but it's also not put forth as a model, so it doesn't suffer from the flaws that might come along with that putting forth. And I guess that's because you stayed contemplative. I mean, one of the things I've tried to do in my lectures is to remember that I'm lecturing to me as well. I'm part of the audience. If I'm talking about how we might behave. I mean, I don't
Yeah.
think that I'm outside of the problems that I'm discussing.
Those two are not a contradiction. If more of us can understand that, we're talking to ourselves as well. Yes.
Well, it takes the sting out of things, and it keeps you on the ground. So,
Yeah.
well, I think that's quite funny that you wrote that review. And it's also quite funny that it is in line with what I thought when I read the book. I should show the book again, since this is a good time to do that.
And that's the cover of with my picture on it. But underneath that is the really cool thing that sort of is the symbol. That's the metaphor that I'm playing with, which is all the red and yellow lights that we have in our life, the hardships, the crises, in the rear view mirror of life, at least via lessons learned, will reveal green light assets that we needed. It's not denying the crisis, of even the death of a loved one, but it is saying, oh, there were lessons even in that. And I would offer, I wondered, Jordan, if some of these lessons we know we're going to learn them when we're in the crisis. Some we don't know till next month. Some we're probably not going to know till our deathbed. And I would argue that some will never be realized until maybe our great grandkids realize them 3 generations from now. And there's a green light in this year we're in right now. Big green lights in this big red light year of COVID and social unrest and political distrust and people having to redefine who they are and what politics is and what's fairness and what's equality and all this in the extremes everyone. There's big green lights that will be revealed out of this year. Don't know when, but more than optimistic, I think realistic that that's going to be true.
That's an excellent place to end. I would say thank you very much. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and I deeply appreciated the acknowledgement, and I'm very pleased that my work has contributed to what you've produced. I also get a kick out of the fact that our books are chasing each other on the top 10 list on Amazon. So I think that's it's a privilege, and it's an impossible privilege. And so I'm very pleased to see that. And I wish you the best of luck. I hope that we get a chance to talk again. I enjoyed that very much.
I did too.
Good. And hopefully the audience will respond in the same way. I think so. So thanks for taking the time, eh?
My pleasure, Jordan. I very much appreciate it. I look forward to the next time. Good to see you, sir.
Good to see you too. Ciao.
Ciao. Bye.